It wasn't the lipstick on the collar or the late nights at the office that tipped me off. It was a single whisper, an accidental breath of truth that shattered my world. Saturday night. The air was thick with the scent of rain and asphalt as I sat in my car, scrolling through old photos on my phone. My wife, Jessica, had gone to a girls' night out, her red dress hugging her figure in a way that used to make my chest tighten with pride. But pride had a funny way of twisting into suspicion lately. She'd started smiling less, coming home later, and laughing at jokes that weren't mine. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe the long hours at work were getting to me. Maybe I was paranoid. Then my phone buzzed, a notification lighting up the screen like a crack of thunder. It was from our shared home security app. Backyard motion detected. Odd. Jessica wasn't supposed to be home yet, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I clicked the notification and opened the live feed. My heart stopped. There she was, Jessica, standing under the backyard floodlight. She wasn't alone. A man leaned toward her, a guy I'd never seen before. Dark hair, leather jacket, the type who probably thought he was too cool for deodorant. I watched in disbelief as they kissed. Not a nervous, fleeting thing. No, this was full-on, shameless passion. My stomach twisted like I'd swallowed broken glass. But it was what happened next that froze my blood. As they pulled apart, she laughed, an ugly, guttural sound I hadn't heard before. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Don't worry. He's too stupid to figure it out." Too stupid? I gripped the steering wheel so tightly it creaked under my fingers. Every ounce of love I had for her shriveled in that moment, replaced by something darker. I didn't storm in. I didn't yell or demand answers. Not yet. Instead, I turned off the feed and sat there, staring at the dashboard. My breaths came shallow and fast. A million thoughts crashed into each other, none of them coherent. Who was this guy? How long had this been going on? And how the hell did she think I wouldn't notice? But as the rage bubbled up, so did something else, training. Years ago, before I met Jessica, I had been someone else. A man with a different name, a different life. And though I'd left that behind, some habits die hard. I calmed myself. Not for her sake. For mine. Pulling out of the driveway, I parked a few blocks away and started walking back to the house, rain dampening my shirt. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations, unexplained absences, and lies disguised as reassurances. Jessica's betrayal was bad enough. But the part that burned the most? She thought I was weak. That I wouldn't catch on. That I couldn't fight back. Oh, she didn't know who she was messing with. As I approached the house, I stayed in the shadows, careful not to alert them. The floodlight clicked off, leaving the backyard in darkness. I crept closer, heart pounding in my ears. Voices drifted toward me, low and conspiratorial. "He'll be out of the picture soon," Jessica said. Her tone was cold, calculated. Not the voice of the woman I married. "We just need to be careful." The man's reply was muffled, but I caught enough to make my fists clench. "I still think we should have just handled it the first time I brought it up." Handle it? What the hell were they talking about? I slipped around to the side of the house and peered through the window. They were standing in the kitchen now, Jessica pouring wine while he leaned against the counter. She was too close to him, her body language intimate and smug. "Don't worry," she said, smirking. "He's harmless. A sheep, not a wolf." The man laughed, but it wasn't a normal laugh. It was cruel, dismissive. I felt a wave of something I hadn't felt in years, the cold, focused rage that used to keep me alive in the field. It was time to stop being a sheep. I stayed in the shadows, my body tense but my mind razor-sharp. Jessica and her lover didn't know I was there, just outside the window, watching their little conspiracy unfold. Harmless? I repeated her words silently to myself, letting it churn inside me like a storm. She didn't just think I was clueless, she thought I was weak. A pushover. A fool. Jessica handed him a glass of wine and leaned against the counter, her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. That laughter, that energy, it was like she had saved the best parts of herself for this guy. For him. My gut twisted, and my hands curled into fists so tight I could feel my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to burst in and confront them, right there and then. But something held me back. Not fear. Not hesitation. Strategy. Because there was more to this than just infidelity. This wasn't just about some sleazy affair. Their words, "handled it, out of the picture," kept circling back in my head. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning something. I stepped back from the window and made my way to the backyard shed, careful to stay out of sight. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, muffling my footsteps as I opened the shed door. Inside, among the clutter, was an old duffel bag. The contents hadn't seen daylight in years, but now they felt like an extension of my own body as I checked the items inside: gloves, a pair of binoculars, a compact recorder. Old habits die hard. I slipped on the gloves and activated the recorder. Then, I crept back toward the house and crouched near the kitchen window, the recorder's tiny microphone angled just enough to pick up their voices. "She won't suspect anything," Jessica was saying. "You just make sure you're ready when the time comes." She? Who's she? I thought. "Trust me," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. "This ain't my first job, Jess. You'll have your new life, and he'll be a bad memory. No loose ends." My heart stopped. A bad memory? No loose ends? They weren't just planning to cheat. They were planning to kill me. The air felt like it had been sucked out of my lungs. I stayed crouched, frozen, as their words sank in. This wasn't a marriage falling apart. This was betrayal at its absolute worst. My wife, the woman I had loved, trusted, built a life with, wanted me dead. The old me, the one who had spent years navigating danger and deception, clicked into place. The pain, the heartbreak, the gut-wrenching realization that my wife had turned into a monster, all of it would have to wait. Right now, I had to survive. I crept away from the house and back to my car. My hands trembled as I slid into the driver's seat, but my mind was already running through the next steps. Step 1, gather evidence. Jessica had no idea who she was messing with. She saw me as harmless, a sheep. But before I met her, I was a wolf in the field, an operative for an organization that didn't officially exist. I had walked through hell and come out the other side. This was personal, but it was also a mission now. I drove to a motel on the outskirts of town and checked in under a fake name. The clerk barely looked up as I paid in cash and carried my bag to the room. Once inside, I set up my laptop and accessed the home security system. The feed from the backyard camera was still active, streaming directly to my account. Jessica and her lover were sitting on the couch now, drinking wine and laughing. Every laugh sent a spike of anger through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to think clearly. Step 2, identify the target. Who was this guy? He clearly wasn't just some random fling. The way he talked, the way he carried himself, it screamed professional. He had the air of someone who'd done this before, who knew how to handle dangerous situations. I ran the image of his face through an old database I still had access to from my CIA days. It was risky, sure, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Bingo. His name was Kyle Harris. A contract killer with ties to several high-profile cases. Extortion, arson, and yes, murder. Step 3, lay the trap. I needed to make them think they were still in control. That I was still the oblivious husband who wouldn't see it coming. But I would. And when the time came, I'd make sure Jessica and Kyle got exactly what they deserved. I stayed up all night, piecing together a plan. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about justice. About making sure neither of them would ever hurt anyone else again. By morning, I had a clear path forward. Jessica and Kyle wanted me out of the picture, but they didn't realize I was already 2 steps ahead. Step 4, execute. I pulled out my phone and sent Jessica a text. Hey, babe. Running late tonight. Big meeting at work. Don't wait up. The bait was set. Now, it was time to hunt. The text was sent, and the wheels were in motion. I watched the 3 dots bubble up on the screen as Jessica typed her response. No problem. Hope it goes well. Love you. Love you. The words were a sick joke now. They tasted bitter even in my thoughts. She probably thought I'd sit at my desk, work late, and come home none the wiser. It was almost laughable how much she underestimated me. I shut off the phone, tossing it onto the motel bed. Every move from now on had to be calculated. Jessica and Kyle wanted me gone, a bad memory, she had said. But they weren't just plotting a murder. They were plotting my murder. And I wasn't going to make it easy. I spent the next few hours going over every detail, every variable. The goal wasn't just to survive. It was to expose them. To make sure their lies and plans came crashing down like a house of cards. For that, I needed to draw them out, force their hand. Step 1, lay the bait. I started with Jessica. I used an encrypted phone line to call a private investigator I'd worked with years ago, back in the days when I was a field operative. His name was Tom, and he owed me a favor. Logan, he answered, his voice gruff but familiar. It's me, I said, keeping it short. I need surveillance on someone, my wife. I'll send you the details. And Tom, this one's ugly. Tom sighed, but there was no hesitation in his voice. Send me everything. I'll get started. I hung up and sent him Jessica's work schedule, her gym hours, the name of her favorite cafe, everything. If she so much as blinked near Kyle, I wanted to know. Step 2, stir the pot. Next, I had to rattle Kyle. Men like him thrived on control, on knowing every angle of a situation. Take that away, and they crumbled. I sent an anonymous email to one of his known aliases, a burner account he probably thought no one had traced. The email was short but effective. Kyle, you're being watched. Back off, Jessica, or you'll regret it. A friend. It wasn't much, just a seed of paranoia to plant in his mind. The kind of thing that would make him wonder who was watching and how much they knew. Step 3, take control. With the bait set, it was time to prepare for the confrontation. I drove back to the house late that afternoon, parking 2 streets away. Jessica wouldn't be home yet, her calendar said she had a meeting at the office until 6. I had time. Slipping inside through the back door, I went straight to my study. Jessica rarely came in here, and I doubted she'd notice the small upgrades I was about to make. First, I installed a hidden camera in the ceiling vent, angled perfectly to capture the entire room. Next, I planted a voice recorder under the desk. Lastly, I set up remote access to the home security cameras, ensuring I could monitor everything from my laptop. By the time I finished, the study was a trap. If Jessica and Kyle came here to talk, I'd catch every word. Step 4, wait for the cracks to show. I left the house as quietly as I came, returning to the motel just as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was going to be a long night, but I wasn't tired. Adrenaline and anger had become my fuel. Around 8:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Tom. Got something for you, he said. Your wife left her meeting early. Guess who she's with? My jaw tightened. Kyle? Bingo. They're at a restaurant downtown. Cozy little corner table, very romantic. I clenched the phone, my pulse quickening. Keep eyes on them. Don't let them out of your sight. You got it. I hung up and opened the live feed from my home security cameras. The house was empty for now, but I had a feeling that wouldn't last. If Jessica and Kyle thought I was tied up at work, they might just take their plotting to the next level. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:15 p.m., Jessica came home. She looked casual, too casual. Jeans, a loose sweater, her hair tied back in a ponytail. It was the kind of look she always wore when she was trying to seem harmless, unremarkable. But I wasn't buying it. She wasn't alone. Kyle followed her inside, carrying a bottle of wine. They headed straight for the kitchen, laughing like a couple of teenagers sneaking in after curfew. I watched as Jessica poured the wine, her movements smooth and deliberate, like someone performing a well-rehearsed act. They didn't go to the living room or the dining room. They went to my study. I leaned forward, my heart pounding as I switched to the hidden camera feed. There they were, sitting across from each other at my desk. Jessica's expression was serious now, her eyes locked on Kyle's. This has to happen soon, she said, her voice sharp and cold. The longer we wait, the more dangerous this gets. Kyle nodded, his face a mask of calculation. Don't worry. I've got it handled. We'll make it look like an accident, clean, no loose ends. I hit record. They were planning my murder in my own house, at my own desk, drinking my wine. It was surreal, like something out of a bad movie. But this was no movie. This was my life, and they had just walked into the trap I'd set for them. As I watched, a dark sense of satisfaction began to bloom in my chest. They thought they were in control. They thought they'd already won. But they were wrong. So very wrong. They sat there, sipping wine, plotting my demise like they were discussing weekend plans. Every word, every smirk, every glance between them felt like gasoline on a fire burning in my chest. But I stayed calm. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Kyle leaned back in my chair, and placed his feet on the desk, his dirty boots leaving scuffs on the polished wood. Jessica laughed, her voice light and airy, as if she wasn't actively conspiring to kill me. It's almost funny, she said, swirling her wine. He's been so clueless. Always talking about trust and loyalty. It's pathetic, really. Kyle smirked, raising his glass. To new beginnings. She clinked her glass against his, her lips curling into a grin. New beginnings. They both drank, and I decided it was time. I stepped away from my laptop, grabbed my duffel bag, and left the motel. The plan had been to wait, gather more evidence, let the trap fully close around them. But as I walked to my car, a different idea took shape, a sudden, reckless idea. They thought they had the upper hand. They thought I was out of the picture. So why not give them exactly what they wanted? It was time to confront them. I drove back to the house, adrenaline pumping through my veins. The rain had picked up again, hammering against the windshield, the rhythmic sound like a drumbeat leading me into battle. When I pulled into the driveway, I didn't bother parking discreetly. I wanted them to know I was home. Let them panic. Let them scramble. As I walked to the front door, I adjusted the recorder in my pocket and checked the safety on the small pistol I'd carried for years. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. And tonight, I was prepared for anything. The door swung open with a creak, and I stepped inside, water dripping from my jacket onto the hardwood floor. Jessica? I called out, my voice steady and loud. I'm home. For a moment, there was silence. Then, I heard hurried whispers and the sound of footsteps. I followed the noise to the study, my heart pounding harder with each step. When I opened the door, the scene was almost comical. Jessica was standing near the desk, her face pale and her eyes wide with shock. Kyle was frozen in place, halfway out of my chair, his hand resting on the desk as if he'd been caught stealing. "Logan." Jessica stammered, her voice high-pitched and panicked. "What are you doing here? I thought you were working late." I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Funny thing. I decided to come home early. Seems like I missed quite the party." Kyle straightened, trying to play it cool. He was taller than me, broader, but I could see the unease in his eyes. "Hey, man. This isn't what it looks like." I tilted my head, pretending to consider his words. "Oh? So you weren't sitting in my house, drinking my wine, and plotting to kill me?" Jessica's face crumpled into a mask of indignation. "Logan, don't be ridiculous. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" I cut her off, pulling my phone from my pocket and hitting play on the recorder. Her voice filled the room, cold and calculating. "This has to happen soon. The longer we wait, the more dangerous this gets." Jessica's mouth snapped shut, her eyes darting to Kyle, who now looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. "I'll make it look like an accident," Kyle's voice echoed from the recorder. "Clean. No loose ends." The silence that followed was deafening. "Care to explain?" I asked, my voice low and deadly calm. Jessica opened her mouth, then closed it again, like a fish gasping for air. Finally, she straightened, crossing her arms over her chest. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," she said, her tone sharp and unapologetic. "But you're impossible, Logan. Always so self-righteous, always thinking you're better than everyone else. I deserve more. I deserve someone who actually sees me." I stared at her, the woman I had once loved, now a stranger. "So your solution was to kill me? That's your version of deserving more?" Kyle stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "Look, man, this is all a misunderstanding. Why don't we just talk?" Before he could finish, I moved. One swift step, and I slammed him against the wall, twisting his arm behind his back. The sound of bone snapping filled the air, followed by a scream as Kyle crumpled to the floor, clutching his arm. Jessica shrieked, backing away from me. "Logan! What are you doing?" "What I should have done the moment I saw you with him," I said, my voice cold as ice. Kyle groaned on the floor, his face twisted in pain. "You're insane." I crouched down, grabbing him by the collar. "No, Kyle. I'm just done playing nice." I turned to Jessica, who was now trembling, tears streaming down her face. "You wanted me gone? Fine. But not like this. You're going to confess everything. To the police, to your friends, to everyone. And if you don't..." I pulled the phone out again, holding it up so she could see the live feed from the hidden camera. "I have everything. Every word, every plan, every lie. If you don't cooperate, I'll make sure you both rot in prison for the rest of your lives." Her defiance crumbled in an instant. "You don't understand," she started, but I cut her off. "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, standing tall. "I trusted you. I loved you. And you betrayed me. Now you get to deal with the consequences." Jessica sank to her knees, sobbing. Kyle just groaned on the floor, too broken to fight back. As I walked out of the room, my chest felt lighter than it had in weeks. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time, I was in control. And they'd never see the next move coming. I walked out of the study, my footsteps deliberate and heavy, echoing down the hallway. My mind raced, already calculating my next move. Jessica and Kyle were still inside, licking their wounds, probably whispering frantic plans to salvage what little leverage they thought they had left. But this wasn't over. Not yet. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass from the cabinet, and poured myself a drink. The irony wasn't lost on me. Drinking my own wine in the house where my wife had plotted to kill me felt oddly satisfying. I leaned against the counter, letting the bitter liquid burn my throat, and waited. Not long after, Jessica emerged from the study. Her face was a mess, tear-streaked, red, and twisted with anger. But there was no shame. No guilt. Just indignation. "How dare you," she hissed, her voice trembling. "Breaking his arm? Threatening us? You're out of control, Logan." I let out a cold laugh, setting my glass down on the counter. "Out of control? Jessica, you were planning to murder me. You really want to lecture me about control right now?" She folded her arms across her chest, trying to regain some semblance of authority. "You have no idea what it's been like living with you. Always watching, always judging. I felt trapped. Kyle gave me something you never could, freedom." "Freedom?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you call it? Freedom to betray your husband? Freedom to hire a man to kill me? That's not freedom, Jessica. That's cowardice." Her jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought she might lunge at me. But then her eyes flickered, a glint of something dark passing through them. "You think you're so clever," she said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "But you're not invincible, Logan. You can't control everything." Before I could respond, there was a loud bang from outside. I froze, my hand instinctively reaching for the pistol tucked into the back of my jeans. Jessica's eyes widened, and she took a step back, her bravado crumbling in an instant. "What was that?" she whispered. I moved to the front door, my heart pounding. Pulling the gun free, I cracked the door open just enough to peer outside. The rain had stopped, but the driveway was bathed in the harsh glow of headlights. A black SUV was parked at the curb, its engine idling. The windows were tinted, and I couldn't see who was inside. Then, the driver's side door opened. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in black from head to toe. He wasn't armed, or at least, not visibly, but there was a confidence in the way he moved that set my instincts on edge. Behind me, Jessica appeared, clutching the doorframe. When she saw the man, her face went pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Who is it?" I demanded, my voice sharp. She didn't answer. The man approached the house, his steps deliberate and unhurried. When he reached the porch, he stopped, hands in his pockets, and looked straight at me. "Logan Michaels," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "We need to talk." I stepped outside, keeping the gun at my side but ready. "Who the hell are you?" He smirked, a cold, calculated expression. "Let's just say I'm an associate of Kyle's. He called me earlier tonight." Sounded pretty desperate. Kyle. Of course. The coward had called for backup. "You've got 30 seconds to get back in that car and drive away," I said, my voice calm but firm. The man's smirk widened. "Or what? You'll shoot me? Go ahead. But you won't like what happens next." He gestured toward the SUV, and for the first time, I noticed the faint movement behind the tinted windows. There were others inside. "You see," he continued, "Kyle hired me for more than just moral support. He thought you might be difficult. So he brought me in to clean up the mess." Jessica let out a small gasp, and I turned to look at her. She was trembling, her eyes darting between me and the man. "You brought this on yourself," she muttered, her voice barely audible. I clenched my jaw, my patience wearing thin. "Jessica, go back inside. Now." She hesitated, then nodded and disappeared into the house. Turning back to the man, I took a step forward. "Let me make this clear," I said. "If you think you're going to walk into my house and take me down, you're dead wrong." The man chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "You're bold, I'll give you that. But boldness doesn't win wars, Logan. Strategy does. And I've got plenty of that." He took a step closer, and I raised the gun, aiming it squarely at his chest. "That's close enough," I warned. For a moment, neither of us moved. The tension was thick, the air heavy with the promise of violence. Then, without warning, the man lunged. I fired. The sound was deafening, echoing off the walls of the quiet neighborhood. The man staggered, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped through his jacket. But he didn't go down. Instead, he smiled. "Big mistake," he growled. The SUV doors flew open, and two more men stepped out, both armed. I cursed under my breath, retreating into the house and slamming the door shut. Jessica was waiting in the hallway, her face a mask of fear. "What's happening?" she cried. "Your boyfriend's cleanup crew," I snapped. "Looks like Kyle's plan B wasn't as clean as he promised." I locked the door and moved to the window, peering outside. The men were advancing, their weapons drawn. "You wanted chaos, Jessica," I said, my voice cold. "Well, congratulations. You got it." And with that, I braced myself for the fight of my life. The pounding on the front door was relentless, each thud like a hammer driving home the insanity of the situation. Jessica stood frozen, her back pressed against the wall, her wide eyes darting toward me for answers I didn't have. The men outside were no amateurs. These weren't hired thugs, they were trained professionals, disciplined and precise. I peered out the side window again. The man I'd shot was still standing, holding his bleeding shoulder while barking orders to his men. The SUV's headlights lit the scene, casting long shadows across the lawn. "They're coming," I said, my voice steady but cold. Jessica grabbed my arm. "Logan, do something. Call the police." I shook her off. "The police? You think they're going to get here in time? You've put us in this mess, Jessica, and now you want me to fix it? Fine." I moved to the hallway closet and opened a hidden compartment in the back. Inside was my emergency kit, a shotgun, extra ammo, and a tactical vest. Jessica's jaw dropped when she saw it. What is that?" she stammered. I didn't answer. There wasn't time to explain why an ex-CIA operative had a stash like this hidden in his own home. I loaded the shotgun and strapped on the vest, my mind already working through the possibilities. Jessica followed me into the living room, wringing her hands. "You're not seriously going to fight them, are you? They'll kill us." I turned to her, the barrel of the shotgun pointing at the floor. "You hired Kyle, and Kyle hired them. If you want to survive this, you'll do exactly as I say. No more lies. No more games. Understood?" She nodded, her lips trembling. "Good," I said. "Then stay out of my way." The first window shattered before she could respond. Glass sprayed across the living room as one of the men tossed in a smoke canister. I acted fast, kicking it back out before it could fill the house with choking fumes. Shots rang out, bullets splintering the doorframe. I dropped to the ground, pulling Jessica down with me. "Stay low," I hissed, crawling toward the hallway. "Logan," she cried, clutching at my arm. "I can't do this." "You don't have a choice." I snapped, yanking my arm free. "This isn't about you anymore. It's about survival." I moved quickly, setting up defensive positions around the house. The men were spreading out, trying to flank me. I could hear their footsteps on the porch, their voices as they coordinated their assault. Then, another window shattered, and I saw the muzzle of a rifle poking through the broken glass. Without hesitation, I fired. The shotgun roared, and the man screamed as he fell back, his weapon clattering to the ground. The others opened fire, their bullets ripping through the walls and furniture. I ducked behind the kitchen counter, my heart pounding but my mind razor-sharp. "Logan!" Jessica screamed from somewhere behind me. "Stay down!" I shouted, reloading the shotgun. I could hear them moving closer, their boots crunching on broken glass. They weren't backing off, they were doubling down. I took a deep breath, then popped up and fired again. Another man went down, clutching his leg as he cursed in pain. But then, the leader stepped into view. He wasn't armed anymore. His hands were up, his face twisted in an expression of fury and grim determination. "Enough," he bellowed. "This doesn't have to end in a bloodbath, Michaels." I kept the shotgun trained on him. Funny, coming from the guy who just tried to storm my house. He smirked, his bleeding shoulder glistening in the light. "You've made your point. You're not an easy target. But think about this, how long do you think you can hold out? My guys are willing to die tonight. Are you?" Behind me, Jessica whimpered. I ignored her, keeping my eyes on the man. "What's your play? You come into my house, try to kill me, and then what? Walk away? You don't think I've already sent evidence to the authorities?" His smirk faltered for a split second, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. "That's right," I said, my voice steady. "I've got everything on record. The calls, the plans, Jessica's little confession. You touch me, and it all goes public." The man's jaw tightened. "You're bluffing. Try me." The standoff stretched on, the tension so thick it was suffocating. Then, from behind me, Jessica did the unthinkable. She screamed, "He's lying. He didn't send anything." I turned, stunned. "What the hell are you doing?" Jessica's face was a mask of desperation and rage. "I'm not going to die because of you, Logan. You've ruined everything." The leader's smirk returned. "Well, that's interesting." Before I could react, one of the men grabbed Jessica from behind, dragging her toward the SUV. She shrieked, clawing at him, but he was too strong. "Let her go!" I shouted, raising the shotgun. The leader held up a hand. "Easy now. We're done here. You let us leave with her, and we'll call it even." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the trigger. "Logan!" Jessica screamed. "Don't let them take me." Her betrayal still burned in my chest, but I couldn't just let them walk away with her. "You've got 5 seconds," the leader warned. I made my decision. The shotgun roared one last time, and chaos erupted. The chaos was immediate and deafening. The blast from the shotgun knocked one of the men holding Jessica off his feet. His body crumpled to the ground, his weapon clattering away. Jessica fell to her knees, screaming in terror as the leader shouted orders to his remaining men. "Get him! Take him down!" The 2 remaining attackers sprang into action. One of them ducked behind the SUV for cover, while the other darted toward the side of the house, trying to flank me. I had seconds to figure out whether I'd made the right decision. Jessica scrambled toward me, her face a mix of fury and desperation. "You idiot! You just made things worse. You wanted me to let them take you?" I snapped, reloading the shotgun as quickly as I could. "This is your mess, Jessica. I'm just cleaning it up." Another shot rang out, shattering the glass of the front window. I ducked low, dragging Jessica with me as splinters of wood and shards of glass rained down around us. "Stay down!" I growled, shoving her toward the corner of the room. The leader stepped forward, his wounded arm now limp at his side. "You're outnumbered, Michaels," he bellowed. You've got maybe 2 shells left in that shotgun. You think you can take us all? I gritted my teeth, glancing toward the hidden compartment in the hallway. The emergency kit had one more ace up its sleeve, but I'd need time to get to it. Logan, Jessica whimpered. They're going to kill us. They're going to kill me, I corrected. You? They might let you live. You're the one who invited them here. She recoiled at my words, but I didn't care. I didn't have time to coddle her feelings. The man hiding by the SUV suddenly made his move, sprinting toward the side door. I swung the shotgun around and fired, the blast catching him in the leg. He went down hard, screaming as he clutched his thigh. The leader cursed loudly, pulling a pistol from his waistband. That's it, Michaels. You want war? You got it. He raised the gun and fired, the bullet slamming into the wall just inches from my head. I dove into the hallway, my heart pounding. Jessica screamed behind me, her voice shrill and panicked. Logan! Do something! I ignored her, my focus on the hidden compartment. I ripped it open and grabbed the flashbang grenade tucked inside. It wasn't much, but it might buy me enough time to turn the tide. The leader's heavy footsteps echoed in the living room as he advanced. I know you're in there, Michaels. You can't hide forever. I pulled the pin on the flashbang and rolled it into the room. Grenade, one of the men shouted. The explosion was blinding and deafening, the flash illuminating the room like a lightning strike. The leader cried out, his gun falling from his hand as he stumbled backward. I didn't hesitate. I charged into the room, slamming the butt of the shotgun into his chest. He went down hard, gasping for air as I disarmed him. Jessica cowered in the corner, her hands over her ears. Logan, stop. Please. I turned to her, my eyes blazing. You don't get to plead for mercy now, Jessica. You chose this path. Now shut up and let me handle it. Before I could say more, the man I'd shot earlier lunged at me from the ground, tackling me to the floor. The shotgun slid out of my grip as we wrestled, his hands locking around my throat. You're dead, Michaels, he growled, his face inches from mine. I struggled, gasping for air as his grip tightened. My hand flailed, searching for something, anything, to use as a weapon. My fingers closed around a shard of broken glass, and I drove it into his side. He screamed, his grip loosening just enough for me to shove him off. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the shotgun and leveling it at him. Don't, I warned, my voice deadly calm. The man glared at me, blood pouring from his side. He didn't move. I turned back to the leader, who was still lying on the floor, groaning in pain. Jessica was crouched nearby, her eyes darting between me and the wreckage of our living room. It's over, I said, my voice firm. Call off your men. Now. The leader let out a bitter laugh, his teeth stained with blood. You think this is over? You don't know who you're dealing with. I stepped closer, pressing the barrel of the shotgun to his chest. Enlighten me. He smirked, even as sweat dripped down his face. You may have won this round, Michaels, but this isn't the end. There are more of us. People you can't even imagine. You think Jessica was working alone? You think Kyle's the mastermind? You're in deeper than you know. Jessica let out a choked sob. What is he talking about, Logan? I didn't answer. My mind was already racing, piecing together the fragments of this nightmare. If the leader was telling the truth, this was bigger than just Kyle and Jessica. And it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The silence after the chaos was suffocating. Jessica knelt in the corner, trembling, her hands covering her face. The leader, slumped against the wall, still managed a twisted grin despite the shotgun aimed at his chest. Blood pooled beneath him, but his smugness remained intact. You're bluffing, I said, my voice low but sharp. You're trying to scare me into a mistake. Tell me the truth, or I'll finish this right now. He chuckled weakly, his breath hitching. You've already lost, Michaels. You don't even see the whole picture. I leaned closer, the barrel of the shotgun pressing harder against him. Then show me the picture. I'll wait. Jessica let out a panicked cry. Logan, stop. Stop this madness. You're not a killer. I whipped my head toward her, my eyes blazing. You don't get to speak about madness, Jessica. This is all because of you, your lies, your greed, your betrayal. Her lips quivered, but she said nothing. I turned my attention back to the leader. You've got 30 seconds, I said. Make them count. His grin faded, replaced by a flicker of fear. All right, he rasped. Kyle wasn't acting alone. There's someone higher up, someone who wants you gone. The CIA burned you, but they didn't erase you. You're still a loose end, Logan. And loose ends? They get tied up. The words hit like a freight train. I had always suspected my old life might catch up to me, but hearing it confirmed sent a chill down my spine. Who? I demanded. He coughed, blood staining his teeth. You think I'd tell you that? You're already dead, Michaels. They'll send more. People like me, people worse than me. I stared at him, my finger tightening on the trigger. For a moment, I considered pulling it, ending his pathetic threats right there. But no. He wasn't worth it. I lowered the shotgun slightly and turned toward Jessica. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. Logan, she whispered, I didn't know it was this serious. I just wanted to get rid of you, not this. Her words were like poison. You just wanted to get rid of me? I repeated, my voice cold and hollow. Jessica, you didn't hire a divorce lawyer. You hired a hitman. You wanted me dead. She burst into tears, her sobs filling the silence. I was angry. You always put your work ahead of me. You left me alone while you were off playing spy or whatever. I thought I deserved more. I stared at her, the weight of her betrayal sinking deeper into my chest. You deserved more? I said quietly. So you thought hiring someone to kill me was the answer? You could have walked away, Jessica. You could have filed for divorce, taken half, and disappeared. But you didn't. You chose this. Her tears didn't move me. I had no sympathy left to give. Logan, the leader wheezed, pulling my attention back to him. You want my advice? Run. Take her, leave this place, and disappear. It's your only chance. I stepped closer, towering over him. You think I'm running? You think I'm scared of you and whatever cartel or agency you work for? I've faced worse than you in my time, and I'm still standing. He coughed again, struggling to keep his eyes open. Suit yourself. But they'll come for you. And when they do, you'll wish you'd listened. I raised the shotgun again, but instead of firing, I slammed the butt of it into his temple. His head snapped back, and he slumped to the floor, unconscious. Jessica flinched at the sound, her sobs growing quieter. What now? She asked, her voice trembling. I stared at her for a long moment. There was so much I wanted to say, so many things I wanted her to understand. But none of it mattered anymore. Now, I said, my voice devoid of emotion, you pack your things and get out of my house. You don't call me. You don't come back. You wanted me gone, Jessica? Fine. I'm gone, just not the way you planned. Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. I walked past her, stepping over the broken glass and shattered furniture. I grabbed my phone from the counter and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. A familiar voice answered after the first ring. Michaels. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. I need a cleanup team, I said. And I need intel on a hitman named Kyle. He's part of something bigger, and I need to know who's pulling the strings. The voice on the other end chuckled. Still in the game, huh? All right. I'll send a team. Sit tight. I hung up and glanced around the wrecked living room. Jessica was still sitting on the floor, her face buried in her hands. The unconscious leader lay nearby, his chest rising and falling weakly. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But one thing was clear, I wasn't the victim here. I wasn't the mark or the loose end. I was the problem. And whoever thought they could erase me was about to learn just how big of a mistake they'd made. Epilogue. Jessica was gone by morning, her car speeding off without so much as a goodbye. The cleanup team arrived shortly after, efficient and silent as they erased all traces of the chaos. I stood in the doorway, watching as they loaded the unconscious leader into an unmarked van. One of the operatives approached me, handing me a file. Intel on Kyle and his associates, he said. You're not going to like what you find. I opened the file, my jaw tightening as I scanned the contents. It wasn't just Kyle. It wasn't just Jessica. This went higher than I could have imagined. I closed the file and looked out at the horizon. They'd tried to take me out. Now it was my turn.